The election fever is gripping the country. And of course, while we think about who we want to vote in the upcoming elections and how we can exercise our rights as a citizen in this democratic country, we have to also ask ourselves, what is the cost of running the election? If you look online right now, you're going to be hard-pressed to find news reports about how much previous general elections have cost Malaysia. But before we try to understand how much the 2018 is going to cost Malaysia, we're going to look into how much the previous general elections in other countries with official reports have cost them. In the United Kingdom, 2016 general election cost them 143 million. This report comes from the BBC. In the US, the Trump versus Hillary campaign, along with the other congressional races, have cost their country $6.4 billion US. This comes from opensecrets.org. In India, the 2014 general elections have cost them about $115 million. So now we have a rough guide about how much general elections cost around the world. Let's take a look into how much the 2018 general elections will cost us. To understand how much it will cost based on the Malaysian Election Commission financing rules. Now on their website, it's a pretty clear outline. For Parliament campaign deposit, candidates have to put a 5,000 ringgit deposit. And if you are running state seats, you have to put 3,000 ringgit. This is specifically for running the campaign, to put up banners, to put up all the other materials like posters and flags, and if you fail to bring it down, your deposits will be forfeited. So that's how much you're going to cost. For parliamentary election deposit, candidates have to pay 10,000 ringgit if you run at the parliamentary seat, and a 5,000 ringgit campaign deposit if you plan to run for state seats. But we're not going to be basing the cost of the general elections based on the deposits made by the candidates to the Election Commission. Instead, we're going to speculate how much the general elections is going to cost Malaysia based on the maximum limit of spending by the parliamentary candidates and the state candidates as set by the Election Commission. Now, the Election Commission states that if a candidate wants to run for a parliament, the maximum spending limit that you can pay or spend is 200,000 ringgit per candidate per parliament. And if you plan to run for a state seat, the spending limit for that is a maximum of 100,000 ringgit per candidate per state seat. So we have to assume that if one parliamentary candidate would spend the maximum 200,000 ringgit, and you multiply this with the 222 parliamentary seats that we have in the country, you have to get about 44 million ringgit per candidate. Again, this is the amount spent by the candidates to get the amount running for the elections. So in a one-to-one contest against all 222 parliamentary seats, it's safe to assume that both candidates would have spent about 88 million ringgit. But this election is a little bit special, largely because there are a lot of three-cornered contests in a lot of the parliamentary seats. So assuming all the parliamentary seats have a three-cornered fight, collectively all three candidates spend the maximum allowable amount as set by the EC, which is 200,000 ringgit. We would have seen 132 million ringgit being spent just at the parliamentary level. Of course, this general election would see the state seats being contested as well. So let's run the same simulation again. Assuming one state candidate would spend the maximum allowable amount by EC, which is 100,000 ringgit, there are 576 state seats. That would mean that the expenditure per candidate against all state seats would come to about 57.6 million ringgit per candidate. assuming there is a one-on-one straight contest, you would see this amount double to 115 million ringgit. Again, using the same scenario that a lot of state seats would see a three-cornered fight, so you would see 3 candidates times 576 state seats spending the maximum allowable amount of 100,000 per candidate. At each level, the candidates would have paid 173 million ringgit. So we fall back, the amount paid by the state seats, which is 173 million ringgit, cost for the parliament at 143 million ringgit. Let's assume that all the candidates at the state and parliamentary level would have paid 305 million ringgit. So is that a lot when you see the country spending at least 300 million ringgit for these general elections? Is that the price you would have to pay for a functioning democracy as we see in this one? We have to then take a look at the cost per person and benchmark it around the world. In the UK, the 2016 general elections cost £2 per person. In the US, it cost them $20 per person. But in Malaysia, with that amount, over 300 million ringgit, divided by 31 million Malaysians, it comes down to about 9 ringgit 50 cent. Think about it. It cost 10 ringgit per person per general election in order for us to save this democracy. Is that a lot? Let us know in the comments below. Ibrahim Sani, thanks for watching and goodbye.